There was a really interesting article in the Boston Globe about what grade level the candidates speak at. So they actually have a way of calculating this, and their conclusions are hilarious. So they say the following, quote, "With his own choice of words and his short, simple sentences, Trump's speech could have been comprehended by a fourth grader." The Globe reviewed the language used by 19 presidential candidates, Democrats and Republicans, in speeches announcing their campaigns for the 2016 presidential election. The review, using a common algorithm called the Flesch-Kincaid readability test that crunches word choice and sentence structure and spits out grade-level rankings, produced some striking results. The Republican candidates, like Trump, who are speaking at a level easy understood by people at the lower end of the education spectrum, are outperforming their highfalutin opponents in the polls. Simpler language resonates with the broader swath of voters in an era of 140-character Twitter tweets. I like how they said Twitter tweets. And 10-second television sound bites. Mike Huckabee and Jim Gilmore, who are struggling in the polls, are both spinning sentences above a 10th grade level, according to the algorithm. Ben Carson, who has surged and maintained a second-place standing in the polls, communicates with voters at a 6th grade level, despite a medical degree and career as a brain surgeon. All right, so I know that most of you guys are probably thinking at this point, well, fair enough and interesting, but what about the Democrats? Well, let me tell you. Among Democrats, Hillary Clinton's speeches are just right for 8th graders. Bernie Sanders' strong critiques of Wall Street and American capitalism are aimed higher at the 10th grade level. By every criteria in the algorithm, Trump is speaking at the lowest level. He used fewer characters per word in his announcement speech, fewer syllables per word, and his sentences were shorter than all other candidates. And then, this is one of my favorite parts of the article, they go on to give examples of the shit Trump says, and you can clearly see how it registers at a lower level. They say his vocabulary is filled with words like huge and terrible and beautiful. He speaks in punchy bursts that lack nuance. It's all easily grasped, whether it's his campaign theme, "Make America Great Again," words about his wealth, "I'm really rich," or disparagement of the Washington culture, "Politicians are all talk, no action." They say he dismisses his opponents with snippy sound bites that, if polls are to be believed, have been devastatingly effective. All right, now, further context on this. They go on to explain that George Washington's farewell address in 1796 was written at graduate degree levels. You ready for this grade? A grade of 17.9. Good googly moogly, I didn't know it went that high. And President Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address in 1863 was at an 11th grade level. John F. Kennedy's speech in 1961 was at a grade level 13.9. And President Obama is at an 8th grade level. So there's a real argument that idiocracy is happening. That it is actually true that we're devolving and we're going more and more towards, simplistic concepts and terms and soundbite sentences, as they say it here, and it's really actively avoiding nuance and detail and more information and data. That's one way of looking at this, and certainly the George Washington point is evidence to point in that direction. But I do have a slightly different takeaway from this, because it's clear they're not actually going based off of content. So it's not like this is some sort of a description of the intellectual level of what they're saying. This is just how they say it. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but if the Democrats really want to do better, and if the Democrats really want to win and get a lot of people on their side, their substance should be the highest intellectual level imaginable, but how they craft their sentences should be at like a 4th grade level. I think Donald Trump is probably right in that sweet spot. Now, don't get me wrong, it's also how he says it, and to some extent what he's saying when he talks against lobbyists and stuff. But there are only political upsides to speaking in those short bursts. Now, some people might say, well, that's a poor reflection on where we're at. And again, that might be true. But when I read this, I actually thought of somebody like Bill Maher. And maybe even myself to a certain degree, although I'm probably not as quippy and one-liney as a guy like Bill Maher or a guy like Donald Trump. But, the goal when I talk, and you could kind of sense this when Bill Maher talks, is he's trying to make a concise, sweet, true point in as condensed a sentence as possible. So remove all the flowery nonsense rhetoric where you're not really saying anything, but you're dressing up the sentence. Drop all that. Just give me the pure substance. Just give me the straight dope of what you're trying to say. And then the concept behind it is hopefully a brilliant intellectual concept, but it should be explained in a way where it does get into everybody's head. And what's wrong with having it so that, somebody who's in middle school or something can understand it? I guess maybe 4th grade is a little too low. It should be over the heads of 4th graders, I guess. But I actually have a mixed, takeaway from this story. I think it's just a fact of reality, and it might be something in human nature, that you're going to be more attracted to the charismatic leader who can talk in sound bites. And that doesn't necessarily mean that because they're talking in sound bites, they're saying stupid shit. With Trump, it happens to be true, but there's not a causation correlation there. You can speak in short, interesting bursts, and the concepts behind what you're saying could actually be very interesting and very detailed and very nuanced and correct. So I have a little bit of a mixed takeaway on this, as you guys can tell. But it is hilarious that Trump is speaking at a 4th grade level, and even somebody like Mike fucking Huckabee speaking at, they said, like an 11th grade level. Incredible.